Hello and welcome to another 31 Days of Horror 2015 segment. This is day 6, movie number 7, and we are talking about the 2007 film Clay. Now, I don't expect too many people to have ever heard of Clay. Essentially, Clay is the name of the title character. He is a young, I'd say late teens male who lives with his father, and his mother has passed away, and he is a troubled individual, as is his father. I'm guessing there was probably some abuse or something growing up. Essentially, Clay sort of looks, I don't know how it ended up coming about, but Clay looks at his father as like his creator, not like his father, but as sort of like a god. And he thinks he's sort of like on a divine quest, if you will, and he's going around and he's killing people based off of some weird thinking that's going on in his head. Not something that his father has ever told him, but something that's just sort of he's come up with on his own, based upon, you know, obviously his upbringing and this relationship with his father. And it, you know, obviously he's a deranged individual, but his father's not that much better. Clearly he's messed up as well, and some of the stuff, you know, the way he acts and what he does in the film are akin to that, for sure. The film was directed by Ron Bonk, who you may not know unless you follow a certain studio, if you will, and that is SRS Cinema, Sub Rosa. He's the guy behind that. This is, of course, you know, it never hurts when you make your own film and you can self-distribute, right? He's done a few films, like directed a few, including City of the Vampires, Strawberry Estates, The Challenge, Miss Cannibal Holocaust. You may know High 8 or Horror Independent 8. Anthology type thing. He did the segment Gang Them Style. If you say it faster and you'll get it. And he's just recently completed She Kills. The film stars Wes Reed as Clay, Tom Minion as Sam, and Emma Koziara as Jessica, and none of them have really done anything. A few of them have reprised roles in other Ron Bonk films, but yeah, they haven't really gone on to amount to any type of career. Oddly enough, Ron Bonk is more known as a producer, and it's kind of, you know, makes sense as having your own film label and distribution. He's produced over 42 about 42, over 40 films, obviously including his own, but I mean, they're all low budget. They are what they are. I wouldn't be surprised, because I know a lot of them came out on the SRS Cinema label, but yeah, I would guess that they probably all did, though I'm not sure on that. Clay, it's a micro budget film. It's one of those things where it's honestly, I think it was shot at Ron's house. I could be wrong, but locally, you get friends, you get people to help you to make these movies and stuff like that. Things like that. Not nearly as micro budget as something, say, like Massage Parlor of Death. That probably had like a budget of like $100. Clay has something going for it. It's a little weird. I found the cinematography was a little amateur in a way, if you like to call it that. It really didn't have that polished look that you would get from somebody who is a more seasoned veteran of that type of thing, and has shot, knows how to do film and do big budget pictures. It really comes off as a video camera shooting things, though. Ron does do the best he can with the materials at hand, and he does some really interesting stuff at the beginning of the film. During a kill sequence, he uses a lot of like split screen and multiple camera shots on screen at the same time. Very video, if you will. Video editing stuff from the 80s and 90s had a lot of that, because they could do that with multiple things, and so it was very reminiscent of that. But it did help and really work in terms of adding to the atmosphere of this opening sort of like kill that he has. And it was odd that that was the only spot where he really used that. It would never really came back. The rest of the film is just shot normal. And I would have thought that if you're going to make the decision to do that in the film at the beginning, you might want to, there might have been some consistency there. But as it turns out, it was sort of abandoned, which is unfortunate. I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was one of those things where, because it was done competently enough, it worked. It can really come off as being cheesy, but I think in the case of this film, it actually, I don't know, he managed to make it work, and that's not the easiest thing to do sometimes, especially when you're working on such a small scale. So it's interesting that it would have been abandoned later on, and not used in any of the other kills. Like I said, Clay is a very disturbed individual, and there are some moments of very disturbing, not necessarily scenes, but ideas unfolding in the film. There's a moment, it's a build-up moment for Clay, and I will give spoiler warning here. I don't think most of you are going to actually see this movie, but obviously he's having not a very good relationship with his father. It's a little bit weird, and he doesn't have a mother, so he ends up at one point befriending a older woman and sort of taking on the role of her dead son, who she lost in the war type thing. And so he comes over and pretty much every day and spends time with her, and obviously he's feeling this sense of family he never had, this mother he never had, and you feel like, oh, okay, maybe this this could be the turning point for him, but that's not the case, and things eventually go bad. But yeah, it's just the whole, you could see it. It's one of those things you're watching, you're just like, oh, that guy is messed up, and you can see it, even though it seems so innocent and such on the screen, and the way they're playing it out and everything. It's just one of those, it's not front and center, it's just sort of behind the message that's going through these scenes, where you're just like, yeah, this cannot end well for these individuals. And then you've got the father, who essentially befriends the little girl next door, who I'm guessing would be just maybe a teenager, maybe 13, to the point where they're like playing chalk on, playing with chalk on the driveway and drinking lemonade and stuff like that. And you immediately start seeing that, okay, there's something wrong here. There was no real indication that there was any wrongdoings beforehand with regards to this individual and children, but there's clearly some kind of weird relationship going on here, to the point where like he's luring her over, sort of like he's fishing. Like he will actually make the lemonade and he will leave it on the end of the steps, just so she will come over and get it, before he can befriend her. And you're just like, oh, this is kind of scuzzy right off the bat. And eventually, it goes the way of semi-romantic, and though the romance never actually gets to play out, you can see that that's the way it's going, to the point where she's going to run away with him. And then you hit up the climax of this movie, and Clay essentially goes bonkers, not because of this, but there's all the circumstances in this film lead up, and Clay, essentially he's had it with this godfather of his, and he's taking matters into his own hands, and he's going to punish everything necessary. And yeah, it's wow, it doesn't go well for a lot of people. Some of which you're okay to see go, and others you're just like, oh yeah, that's not good. Oh my, yeah, that's not good for them. But yeah, it's Clay isn't what I would call a great film. I wouldn't necessarily even call it a good film. There are a lot of things that I think could have been compressed in it. It's almost 2 hours long, and it really should have been wrapped up in probably about an hour and a half. There's a lot of dialogue. There's a big long section in the middle where nothing really happens. It's more story development, but you know what? I'm sure that the development could have been handled a different way and shortened up, so that we're getting some, something to whet our appetite, keep us engaged. And yeah, it's really, I think that is the biggest problem with Clay, is it's too long. It needed to be tightened up, essentially, whether that was before shooting or after. And that's one of the problems. Sometimes if you don't catch this stuff beforehand, it can be hard to do it after the fact, because what you've shot is what you've shot, and yeah, shortening that runtime can be hard when you need these dialogue sequences to be able to tell the story that you set out to tell. But it's I can see that, even on a small budget, Ron Bonk, who also wrote the film, it's essentially his production. There's definitely some talent behind this guy. He may not have, and I think this is one of the problems when you're the writer, director, distributor, producer type thing of a film. You're a little too involved sometimes, and he probably edited the film too. Had there been more people involved in that, and took some of those roles away from him, then maybe the story itself as a whole could have been told a little better, so that it was more, it was just delivered better. But yeah, I'm looking forward. Like I said, he has a new film coming out, She Kills. So after seeing Clay, and I have a bunch of his other films that I've picked up, which I'll maybe 31 Days of Horror this year. I may check out some more. You never know. I do have some more Sub Rosa titles that I am going to look at this year for the 31 Days of Horror. So I don't know if they're Ron Bonk titles or not. But yeah, just from seeing this, I want to see, you know, it's been 8 years since he did this film, so it would be interesting to see how he developed, right? So would I recommend Clay? If you are into you know, micro-budget films, micro-budget horror that's actually half decent, then yes. You know, it's not perfect. It clearly, you know, it shows its problems quite clearly, but it is a film that's still enjoyable. There's still a lot in here. You know, like here from Film Threat, bravura editing, intelligent camera work builds a sense of gnawing dread that becomes so overwhelming that the inevitable descent into violence almost seems cathartic. And that's true. And honestly, that's a great way to put it. You get to the point where the violence at the end of the film is a release, not just for, you know, people involved in the film, the characters, but for the viewer itself, because you've been just getting this sense of ooh, yuck, dread throughout the film. And that's what I'm saying. Like, Ron Bonk did a very good job at that. So I want to see if he, you know, how he managed to do, you know, what he did with his other films, because he did a few of them. So it is one of those things where I would say, if you're curious, if you've seen any of his other films and you enjoyed those, definitely pick up Clay. If you've not, I can't really say. Yeah, it's a great. I wouldn't say great. It's a very, very good low budget film. It's one of those films where, honestly, if I was going to give it a rating out of 5, I would say, like, I don't know, 2.5 out of 5. It's not a great film. It's got a lot of problems, but it's got a lot of potential at the same time, and it does deliver certain things, like I said, the dread and such, where they are essentially what make the film, which otherwise would really kind of suck. Gore, not so much. Nudity, not so much. Violence, even that happens off screen most of the time. So what does Clay have for it? It has this sense of yuck, dread, just, yeah, the sense that there's really something wrong going on with these characters, and it really comes through very, very well on screen. So yeah, if you want to check out Clay, I don't know, it may be available from the Sub Rosa website. It may not. Look around. Hopefully, you know, maybe you'll be able to track it down cheap and take a look at it. But if not, honestly, you can still sleep at night. That's all I'm saying. So, till next video, take care, have a good one. We got more 31 Days of Horror coming up soon.